Hi everyone, here's the Chemist once again, and today I'd like to talk a bit about the Yiddish Policemen Union, which is one of my favorite books of all times. It's probably, maybe my favorite Michael Chabon novel, and it's a book I've mentioned it in my video on my favorite books of all times, but I haven't really talked much about it on my channel. I read it several years ago, and I recently reread it. In a few weeks I may film a reader's guide, a video where I talk about, what academia is saying about this novel, or the current state of scholarship about the Yiddish Policemen Union is, if you guys are interested. Today I'd just like to talk a little bit about it and to let you know why I think it's such a great book and why I think you should read it and that you may have a great time with it if you do. Now let's start by talking about what I think is probably the most astonishing feat of the novel, which is its world building. Chabon in the Yiddish Policemen Union takes an alternate version of history and creates an imaginary land. He creates a Jewish state in Alaska, in the Alaskan territories, and he peoples it with an entire community of people, with more than 3 million people, with an entire, basically an entire state, a big metropolis. He gives it an economy, he gives it an history, and an underground, a secret, alternate history too. He peoples it with, different crime organizations. He gives it an entire cuisine. He gives it some kind of lore and urban legends. He creates, most notably, a language for this nation that is perceivable, and it seeps throughout the entire book, even though it's written in English, and all of this is very good. Once you've read the novel, and even more once you've reread it once or twice, you end up as if you've been there, as if you've lived in Sitka, as if that is an actual place. Not only you know about the history of this place, you also know about the secret history that people whisper to each other, the kind of conspiracy theories that, yeah, that one historical event probably wasn't organized by the Jews at all, or maybe it was organized by the, Alaskan Indians, and so on and so forth. And all of that is very good, as I said. All of that is, it's great. It's excellent when a novel manages to pull off that kind of feat. What makes it pretty incredible, if you ask me, is that Chabon manages to do that in a novel that is 99% plot, in a novel where really something happens on every single page, a novel that never stops, a novel that never takes a break, and when, in the very few moments where the novel pauses a second, it always does in order to give you more insight into the psyche of the character, most notably of Meyer Lenzman, this hard-boiled detective who is the main character of the novel. Consider The Magicians by Leo Grossman, which is a book I reviewed recently. This book too features some amazing world building. It features an entire Narnia-like alternate continent, alternate reality. It also features a beautiful magic school in upstate New York. And Grossman too depicts all of these places beautifully and gives you lore and gives you all kinds of details about these places, but he has to stop for entire chapters and go like, Brakebills was organized with, a tower in its south section, and, there was this legend about this guy who lived here in the past, and so on. Whereas Chabon never does that. Somehow Chabon manages to give you all of Sitka, all of this imaginary land, without ever stopping. Really, I think one of the longest exposition passages in the novel is about the recipe of the Sitka donut. If you stop and think about it for a second, that's truly astonishing, and there's really an element of magic and of showmanship to it. It's the kind of book that makes you feel like, rereading it all over again and, see and study where does all that, power of immersiveness come from. I'm not the only one liking this novel, and in fact it won both the Nebula Award and the Hugo Award, the two most important literary awards in the science fiction genre. Getting both of them is like, a badge of honor within the science fiction literary world. Is this science fiction at all? There are no spaceships in this novel, even though there are a few fantastical elements, and leaving matters of, nerdy matters of genre aside, I do absolutely think this is a science fiction novel, but I see why some people might doubt it. It's something that, also pertains The Underground Railroad by Colson Whitehead, which came out last year. It's an excellent novel. It's winning every literary prize on the planet, including science fiction prizes. even though it's not the kind of science fiction novel you'd imagine. It's not about robots, it's not about spaceships. Darko Suvin, which is one of the main theoreticians of science fiction, said that science fiction is a genre that pays more attention and focuses more on ideas and on creating, defamiliarizing realities or creating alternate realities in order to reflect upon science and to reflect upon philosophical issues and all sorts of stuff, and doesn't focus too much on character like other literary genres do. And H.G. Wells also, espoused a similar position. He is, of course, the godfather of contemporary science fiction, and he famously, was in a sort of struggle with Henry James because he favored novels of ideas, whereas Henry James favored novels of characters. In that sense, if you consider those, fundamental values to be at the heart of science fiction, then I see your doubts. This is very much a novel of character, but through its depiction of character and through its plot, it explores so many different political, social, philosophical, personal issues, from depression to the fate of the Jewish people to the horror of history as some kind of Lovecraftian monster. And in that sense, even though at a first analysis it doesn't seem too much like a novel of ideas, it does indeed feature like some kind of fantasy or science fiction novel. In a way, its depiction of the Jews, of this state, of this Alaskan state, feels very much like the depiction of a fictional race in a fantasy novel, like if these people were elves. And if that sounds, I understand it sounds monstrously offensive, I don't want to be, it's because that's part of the awesome defamiliarizing power of the novel. This is a novel that makes you take a step back from the, the things you know about the Jewish state in the world we inhabit, about Jews in the world, about their role in the world, about their position, their safety in the contemporary world, and makes you look at all these things under a different light. And it does the same with other people too. And, Christians too, white Christians too in the book do feel like a fantasy race. And at one point I found myself thinking, they are depicted as these kind of people, waging wars for all sorts of idiotic reasons, and I was like, hey, white Christians don't act like that. Oh no, wait, they do. And that's the power of defamiliarization. It's why it's so powerful, and it's why even such a novel such as this, which, if you ask me, it's not political at all. It was heavily criticized, but it doesn't have an agenda. I don't think Chabon had any kind of agenda, pro-Israel, against Israel, pro-Alaska, against Alaska, any kind of agenda like that. At the same time, it makes you reflect on issues that, yeah, sure, are political, but even more than that, they are quintessentially human issues. Man, is this a sprawling review. I'm almost done, but just let me say that this book is worth reading, even just to see Chabon struggling and failing to write in a different style than his trademark Baroque style, with full of colorful descriptions and amazing ways to describe the most mundane of events. And he tries to write in a very dry, hard-boiled style, a la, Chandler, Hammett, the kind of, old-school hard-boiled novels. And sometimes he manages to do that, and sometimes he fails, and, you get a one-paragraph sentence about a guy getting up from his chair and drinking from a glass. And when he fails, that's amazing. Or he describes the sky as marmalade color and those kinds of things. When he fails, it's amazing. It's a bit like with Telegraph Avenue, another awesome novel by Chabon, which begins with a paragraph that is very dry, made of short sentences, almost lyrical, but in a, very contemporary way. And at the end of that paragraph, you get the first sentence about the guy who gets into his shop, and he looks like Gamera from Japanese cinema, and the sentence goes on, and the style is so mellow and baroque, and you're like, oh yeah, that's what I was expecting. It's a bit like listening to Ride the Lightning, the album by Metallica, and the first seconds are acoustic, and you're like, what's this stuff? And then, Fight Fire with Fire kicks in, and you're like, oh yeah, that's what I was expecting. Once again, as many other Chabon's novels, arguably as all other Chabon's novels, this is a reflection on the horror of the world and on the beauty you can find within it that allows you to, bear with it and allows you to escape from all this horror, be it love, be it beautiful things, be it storytelling, even just in the act of, you can't change the world, you can't change its horrors, but you can scream out about them, you can talk about them, tell stories about them, and that's already something. On the level of plot, it's probably the most accomplished, easily, if you ask me, the most accomplished among Chabon's novels. I think it's a great tragedy that so few of his works have been adapted into movies, but in this particular case that's a colossal tragedy. And I can't wait for the day when someone will turn the Yiddish Policemen Union into a movie, a TV series, even a role-playing game. I'd love to play, like, you know, a Sitka policeman myself, because this world, this fictional world of Sitka deserves to be expanded, deserves to survive and to grow and to be, you know, expanded by other fans of this novel, and to, you know, keep on living, even if it's just for laughs, even if it's just fictional. I know I'm a bit of a fanboy when it comes to these novels, so, you know, this was very much me going, oh, it's so good. So let me know what you thought about the Yiddish Policemen Union. I know some people have issues with this novel, it's not everyone's favorite book, and let me know in the comments below what did you think about it, and what did you think about my review. Thank you for watching as always, guys. Bye, guys.